borderline personality disorder, and substance abuse and or alcoholism. And a person on the channel, mentioned that their person with BPD, so the person they're still trying to make the relationship work with BPD, is substance addicted and is using opioids. And they wonder, is there still a chance for that relationship to work? Well, I'm not here to insult anybody's intelligence, because I happen to think that that person probably knows the answer intellectually, right? So the IQ tells you, your IQ tells you, this is kind of like not working out. This is really painful. This hurts me, but I love that person, etc. But I'm not here to work with you if I resonate with you, because AI just isn't a grand master of help or helping you to strategize, to learn, to grow, to absolutely heal what you need to heal, to stop holding that fantasy bond up in ways that people with codependency aren't often even aware of. The fantasy bond is what asks the question from the person's fantasy bond. Is like, well, they're using these, substances and or alcohol, and whether they're in therapy or not, therapy doesn't matter when somebody is addicted and using and or, an alcoholic, because you can't get to anything real beyond, in BPD, a lot of that addiction is protection, is part of their wayward, very unhealthy, toxic way of just trying to survive. And I'm not trying to legitimize that, but if they're trying to survive and they're addicted, they're not, you have no control over changing that, and they are not going to do anything. They might try, but so many people with BPD, high percentages with the substance abuse and addiction, nothing's going to change. Therapy, like I said, can't work. So what are you doing? It's you, if this applies to you or anybody that can relate to this, it's the continued strengthening, intellectually at least, but yes, underpinned by your emotions, of a fantasy bond, which is part of a trauma bond. These relationships are toxic, unhealthy. These people with BPD untreated, and especially when they're substance addicted on top of that, they don't love you. They can't love you. They don't attach to you. They don't see you. They don't know you for who you are, because they don't have any self to know themselves from which to know you. Substance abuse and BPD, I didn't even bother checking, what's the last stat that some, research or like some paper or somebody said out there, because they're never accurate. But I can just say that there's a significant percentage of people with BPD who have substance and or alcohol abuse issues, and they're drowning in them. And that's part of it's a lot of moving parts of borderline personality disorder for many, not all people with BPD, but it's impulsivity as well as it's them drowning in the emotions that they feel, they get dysregulated, that they don't understand. So what is there in borderline personality disorder that drives all of this and so much more? There's a big IQ, EQ being emotional quotient, emotional intelligence, or in the case of people with BPD, lack thereof. There's a big BPD IQ, EQ discrepancy. And not to the same severe extent that happens for people with BPD, that they might have some awareness intellectually and be able to use words in skillful ways, like weaponizing therapeutic terms, etc., and always making excuses and projecting out their behavior and blaming you. Well, people with codependency, I think you have to look at the fact that you too have your own IQ, EQ split. It's not as extreme as people with BPD, but there are many people out there in a relationship with somebody with BPD who is substance addicted, and they're not going to be able to get any help in therapy even if they're seeking that. And often people with BPD seek all the wrong types of, quote, therapy, unquote, or help, and they're not doing the right modality with professionals that they should be doing. But if you're someone who loves someone with BPD today and they're substance addicted and or alcoholic, I've had so many clients recently even talking about this. And the fantasy bond prevails because you as a person with codependency, if you relate to this, maybe you just don't want another abandonment. Maybe you just can't handle another loss of a relationship. And whatever that is, of course, goes back to childhood and childhood woundedness, like I'm always saying. But borderline personality disorder is such a relational disorder among all the other things that we could go deep into, and I have over lots of videos and etc. about the moving pieces of BPD and what makes it so tragically freaking impossible to maintain these relationships without losing yourself, starting to lose your mental health and your physical health. So people really, really need to hear this, even if you don't want to. If you were the person with BPD, that is really, really untreated especially, but what is well enough treated? They have to pretty much get into a recovery where they heal. And yeah, that's possible, but what's the percentage of people with BPD that do that? I mean, I'm not the only one, but I was never substance addicted, or I never drank or anything like that. And that matters too. But the thing is, it's your fantasy bond. It's something from your childhood. It may or may not directly be related to a parent with substance issues or addiction or alcoholism, but often that could be the case. But something hurt you in childhood, and that wounded inner child in you, unbeknownst to you, in a very unconscious way, is continuing to try to, quote, fight, unquote, for the relationship and make it work no matter what. And maybe you don't realize that's because of what you need, and that you're going about it in a really toxic, unhealthy way that is a codependent repetition of childhood woundedness. And you're doing it with somebody with borderline personality disorder. You think it's all about the borderline and only about the borderline. No, it isn't. And it is the element of the fantasy bond, of the trauma bond, that the harder you try and the more times you take them back, or you reverse hoover them, etc., it's always diminishing returns. It's increasing diminishing returns. And I mean, I could say to you, it's really not worth it. It's hurting you. You're losing yourself. It's not going to work out. And yet, somewhere in your IQ, you probably know this, but emotionally, you don't want to accept it. Just like people with BPD who have high IQs, and they can talk about stuff, and they can sound really aware, and they hoover you back, and they say, well, I get it now. And then they share what seems like amazing awareness at times, don't they? And then you take them back, you try again, you recycle the relationship, but, the rinse, wash, repeat cycle of jade conversations where you justify, argue, defend, and explain, and their projection, and they're blaming you, and the breakdown, and the devaluation again without any re-idealization, and then they drop you like a hot potato again. And the cycle goes around and around and around. And you think somewhere in the middle of that cycle, especially when they're substance addicted and or alcoholic, that they're somehow going to just, change for you? Get it for you? That you have any agency, power, or control over what they're doing? That you can sit there and talk to them for hours and over and over and over again and try to rationalize what they need to do to change so the relationship can work and you can feel better too. You're wasting your time. You're strengthening the fantasy bond. You're strengthening the trauma bond. And so people with BPD, when they hoover back and you let them back, it's an intersection of really extreme BPD IQ EQ split and to the not so extreme but still really hurtful, painful, and significant, the codependent discrepancy between your IQ and your emotional intelligence. And it just means on both sides, not the same. People with BPD been usually very traumatized in their childhoods, and they don't grow up and they don't have a self. People with codependency, adverse experience to trauma in childhood, not the same, not to the same degree, usually not as primal, so you don't lose yourself entirely. That comes when you keep trying to recycle relationships with substance addicted borderlines or untreated borderlines who may or may not be using something. And so it's fantasy bond stuff on your part if you're codependent. And in codependency, denial is so very strong. And so I'm going to be doing a video soon on the BPD IQ EQ split. But I thought I would just mention this in this video because it's also something that happens for people with codependency. Like I said, not as extreme as those with BPD. But there are reasons that you don't understand today why you are so determined to make one of the most toxic relationships you could ever be in that is harming you as a codependent, that you're going to hang on to the fantasy bond and the trauma bond because you're now, quote, addicted, unquote, to that. But it's not the same as substance abuse or alcoholism or that level of addiction, but it feels like it. So many people continue to report to me in sessions, etc. So I understand that. But these relationships, I have to be honest with you, with respect and empathy for you, they are impossible. And you are not going to overcome it. You are not going to be, I mean, you can overcome it, but you're not going to make the relationship work. You're not going to make it healthy. What are you doing to yourself? In the name of what? Love? Where somebody doesn't, like with BPD, doesn't have a self, and they don't have a self, and they're addicted to substances and or alcoholics on top of everything, and BPD is largely, among other things, a relational disorder, they can't see you, they can't hear you for who you are. You're always, as I've said a million times, and I don't mind saying again, the object of the relation of like wounding parent in devaluation and in these cycles of trying to keep the relationship going. And the more you ruminate on them and the more you think about them, and the more you surrender your own agency to like work with someone like myself, if I resonate with you, to help yourself out, the more you just strengthen the trauma bond and you strengthen the fantasy bond and you strengthen what's also known and in part in all of this is the betrayal bond. And you abandon yourself. And then so many people wonder why they've lost themselves, why they feel. These are partners of people with BPD, exes of people with BPD, sometimes an adult child of a person with BPD who has an ex with BPD or an on-off person with BPD that now don't feel like life is worth living at all. It's not just people with BPD anymore. Everything is getting exponentially worse. There's so much misinformation and disinformation out there. And if you're somebody who's going through this and you're writing your story on one of the, Quora, Reddit, wherever, or you're working with you, or you're, typing AI all day or all night, and some people are, so I'm not trying to throw everybody in the same basket, but what are you doing? Because you need your own help. You need your own treatment. I've got 36 years worth of experience and a lot of successes of helping people with codependency break the trauma bond, the fantasy bond, the betrayal bond, do the inner child healing work, the process in which one can heal codependency, and then come to realize very starkly, both in your IQ intelligence and your growing building emotional intelligence. Yes, that means you still need to do some emotional maturing on your own part to be really honest. But the way to break these toxic, unhealthy bonds and stop losing yourself is to learn so much more about how you got there in the first place and what's still happening inside of you unconsciously from a wounded inner child that's now controlling your life. And you think it's just the borderline that feels so impossible they're controlling your life and ruining your life and destroying you, etc. It's not just the borderline, though I'm not making any excuses for their behavior. But as they're drowning and trying to survive, often moment to moment of every day of their lives, what are you supposed to do about that? And then the other thing is, a lot of clients will say to me, and people have said on the channel here, etc., but I love him or her, and I can't, and I've been abandoned, and I don't want them to feel that, and the just endless ways in which codependents put the person with BPD's feelings first, and you ignore your own and you abandon yourself. And people with codependency don't know themselves as well as you think you do, but it's not as extreme, again, as people with BPD who have no self. But you can end up close to that if you keep trying to recycle an impossible, toxic relationship. So when even without substance abuse and or alcoholism, BPD relationships, these people need 10 to 15 plus years of treatment. Many may go for different. DBT is not the be-all to end-all solution. Some people can, manage the symptoms with using some DBT skills, but many are attempting but cannot do it. And if they're addicted to substances and or they're alcoholics, it doesn't matter how hard they try. That gets in the way. Perhaps you as a codependent have your own substance abuse issues or your own alcoholism. And please, if that is the case, excuse me, know that you can't compare. Well, I know what they feel, and because we both have the same problem, or maybe you're going to go to AA together. It's toxic trauma bonds that aren't going to work out. So whether you're young, middle-aged, or older, what are you wasting your precious time in life for in codependent repetition cycles to try? Because you've got to have this one person, this one broken human being. Borderline personality disorder is tragic. I'm not excusing their behavior or any of their abuse. I'm just saying you're human beings that are drowning and trying to survive. And they will pull others down with them if you let them, and they'll pull you down with them in a way that really makes you not know who you are anymore. And so, even more so than just people with borderline personality disorder who aren't all the same, but still, as toxic as those relationships are, as lacking love, as much as lacking love, the trauma bond and the fantasy bonds, etc., without addiction on the part of somebody with BPD, nightmare, impossibility, not going to work out. Then you add in the substance addiction and or alcoholism and the impulsivity and the escapism of survival that is for people with BPD. They are out of control. So what starts happening to you with your own issues that created the codependency? You are trying so hard to control something and maybe trying to help the other person, you think, but it's really deeper than that inside of codependence, and you can't do it. You don't have the power. You're losing agency over yourself. People with codependency have a unhealthy, dysfunctional relationship to a degree with self before the person with BPD and your childhood issues unconsciously get into the situation. And the next thing you know, like, you pin it all on the borderline. But once you know they have BPD and once you know they're substance addicted and or alcoholics, what are you doing? What are you doing to yourself? You've got to get out of the relationship. You've got to go no contact, but as someone said in another comment on another video of mine, why don't I recommend going no contact right away? I don't remember what I said in that video or podcast or whatever whatsoever, but I know that I never say, hey, don't go no contact. No. What I was probably addressing there, and people love to criticize, to just be denying and in their own, hurting places. I don't say go no contact. It's very helpful to go no contact when that's possible, right? When there are children involved and etc. But people can't just do that right away. That's why I don't say, hey, you, right now, go no contact, cut this out. I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you. I have 36 years worth of experience. I can really help you. But go no contact right now. Because it's just not possible for so many people. If you can do it, yeah, absolutely do it. But if you're not in a circumstance where you can do it, you can't do it. And then what are you going to do? You got to learn to strategize about, if you have a child with a person with BPD, and what you're going to do with that, but not allow them to have effect over you anymore. So you need to break the trauma bond, the betrayal bond, and the fantasy bonds. And again, it's grim. When people with BPD are substance addicted and or alcoholic, many of them just, in that kind of arena in life, whether people have BPD or not, living the life of using certain substances and not being able to stop, and often refusing to even go to rehab, let alone therapy for BPD, but rehab for the substance addiction. These people just don't make it so often. And it's tragic. But even if they do go and they do start working on the substance abuse, etc., toward potentially going to therapy for BPD or not at all, it's still toxic. It's still impossible. You still really need to ask yourself, what are you doing? And not only why you're trying to rescue them and you think, oh, somehow they'll get it together and it'll be good for you, you're losing you. And I have so many clients recently too, and over time, they're not only losing their spirituality, their hope, their hobbies, their parts of self, but they don't even want to be here anymore because they're losing themselves that much to all of this, which isn't just about the borderline, and also losing your physical health. People are losing their physical health in a myriad of ways due to these stressors, due to these toxic relationships. You can't be in a toxic relationship and call it, quote, love, unquote. It's not healthy love. And your love isn't healthy either because they can't take it in. People with BP, they can't take it in. They can't hold it, whether they're addicted to something or not. And it's tragic all the way around. But I implore you today, if you're somebody who still thinks it can work, and they're out there night after night, day after day, like maybe they're not even working, lots of scenarios, but they're just drinking and drugging. And even if they're not doing that, the relationships are still impossible. You need to address, as a codependent, as a person trying to save a relationship you can't save, that never really was a relationship in the first place like you thought it was, you need to get into your own healing and recovery process. And I'm out here to work with you if I resonate with you. And it takes time, and it's not a linear process. And I can't just tell you, do step 1, do step 2, do this, do that, and everything. It doesn't work like that. It's complicated. But the first thing that you need to know, that you probably do know intellectually, that you need to filter into your emotional reality, because many of you aren't feeling your emotions. You're just feeling a lot of pain and helplessness, but you're not feeling or understanding all the other emotions that are setting off your nervous system all the time and really starting to deplete your physical and mental health. So I implore you to think more about you. If you're a codependent, recycling, trying to fix a borderline, hanging in there, or asking the question that somebody left a comment in another video of mine asked today. My person with BPD, I'm just not quoting directly, but my person with BPD is using opioids and won't get any help? Is there a chance for this relationship to work? The answer on the IQ level is no, and you can probably think of a lot of reasons why. But filter that down to your emotional landscape and how much you're hurting and losing yourself, and your physical health is being impacted because it is a toxic, tragic impossibility, and the relationship will not work out, and you're going to hurt yourself, and the borderline's going to hurt you more, and it's both of you now contributing to the demise of people with codependency. It's the codependent themselves in unconscious ways, and it's much of what the borderline will do and of course won't do, and how the relationship can't work out. Beware of the borderline IQ EQ split, because they don't have a self, and they have low to no emotional intelligence. And then now look at yourself in the mirror and ask yourself, you might have a great career, you might be a wonderful person with codependency, but where's your emotional intelligence at compared to your intellectual knowledge and application of said? These relationships don't work out. You need help to stop believing that you can make it work while you're getting decimated by your own beliefs and the trauma bond, etc., and by what the person with BPD continues to not be able, let alone agree to or try therapy with addiction in the mix and even without it. So hope that you can hear what I'm trying to say to you is you need help to learn how to care about you more and enough. And you need help, yes, to learn how to love yourself. But you need help, moreover, to break these unhealthy bonds and to be able to put yourself first. Because unlike so many people, so many clients have said to me, and so many people all across the internet are writing about all this stuff erroneously, toxically, not helping you, not helping anybody else, not helping readers, many comments. It's a waste of time out there, ladies and gentlemen. You need to get help and find the true answers that you need to set yourself free, to heal your wounded inner child, if you've been with a BPD or you're still fighting for that. And you need to emotionally mature, if I can just be blunt, but with empathy. Because something's hurt you in childhood, and you're blaming the borderline for everything, and they're not responsible for everything for you, just like you're not responsible for much of what they do at all. If anything, I can't think of anything. But therein lies the fantasy bond, and therein lies the trauma bond. So I hope this helps somebody. I hope it gives you more food for thought. And like I said, if you resonate with me and you'd like to work with me, you can always book a session or sessions at ajmahari.ca/sessions. But you deserve relief today. You deserve to know what love really is. And you deserve so much more than you even believe in emotionally for yourself. So beware of the borderline with the IQ, hoovering back IQ of, oh, I get it now, and then they'll share some awareness with you. Because it's only in their head. It's not in their emotional landscape. Nothing changes. And on the other side for you, something similar is going on, but not to the same extreme. You know things intellectually, but you can't stop the way you feel. So you, often codependents describe themselves as addicted to these borderlines, whether they're substance addicted or not, or whether you are yourself. Bottom line is, these relationships do not work out, do not get better. If anything was going to get better, it would take something like 10 to 20 years from now. And you might not last that long in knowing yourself anymore or in having the will to live anymore on the other side of somebody with BPD. Because you're throwing yourself away in a repetition compulsion from childhood woundedness to a borderline that's just devastating you more and more. And now you're trapped. And what are you going to do? I help people get untrapped. I help people heal. I help people go no contact or strategize how to cope if you have children or for some other reason you can't go no contact. So it's time, ladies and gentlemen who are codependents, to stop focusing on the borderline. And how about getting yourself into doing some healing recovery work with someone like myself, if I resonate with you, so that you can really gain agency back over yourself and your own life, and you can change your experience and you can heal. And it's all possible. I'm not going to say it's easy, but it doesn't take any 10 years like what borderlines are facing and then some. It's your emotional childhood woundedness that keeps you believing in a fantasy bond, childlike way, even as codependents, that somehow, sooner or later, one day, this person's going to wake up from their own BPD, substance abuse, addicted nightmare, and be there for you. It's not going to happen. So what are you doing to yourself above and beyond what a borderline is doing to you? And when you know the lay of the land and you know it's BPD, which you probably didn't know in the beginning of these situationships and tremendously, tragically toxic relationships, now you're volunteering to hurt more, to abandon yourself, and to be even hurt more by the person with BPD. It doesn't excuse what they're doing. You're not the cause of what they're doing, but you're sitting there passively accepting it, somehow fooling yourself into believing if you could just help them enough, or if they could help themselves enough, or in enough time, or some magical wand-waving day in your fantasy bond beliefs, it'll all work out and be okay. It won't. It isn't going to. It doesn't. And love, healthy love, is not worth fighting for at all. And as always, take care.